Welcome back to the wacky, wonderful WiseWorks podcast. All you guys, gals, geeks, and goofballs, we've got a pretty fascinating podcast ready for you today. It's about the film industry. It's about Amazon Prime. They have a crazy goal that they're trying to set for the movie industry. It kind of seems like this tech giant is trying to take over Hollywood for the future, and we're going to dive into it at length here on this podcast, and we're going to also discuss some of the mistakes that other studios have made when it comes to gauging the industry and where the money is at in media. Thanks so much for joining us. I got myself here. I'm Joe, and my brother Josh. If you guys watch regularly, or if you've ever sampled this podcast, we usually have Wyatt. He is currently on a break right now. He should be back next week for the podcast, but you just got us this week. And so this is going to be a pretty interesting podcast where we're looking at a little bit more of the nitty-gritty of the film industry and what the future holds when it comes to the film industry, right?
Sure.
And but before we get started, how you doing?
I'm here. I'm doing.
You're doing.
I'm doing.
Right. Man, I feel like these podcasts do depend. Like the how we approach it is like very dependent on what time of day we record.
Oh yeah, but we're all over the place.
We're all over the place right now.
At night, we're in the morning, we're in the middle of the day, we're on
Sometimes,
Saturday, Sunday,
right.
Monday, we're recording.
Sometimes we record this podcast on 8-9 o'clock on a Friday PM, right? Sometimes we're up at 7 a.m. on a Saturday recording.
On a Tuesday.
And we're all over the place. And so our energy level always dictates, or at least like
we don't have
what kind of
coffee.
mindset we're bringing to it, right?
No good coffee.
I did drink all my coffee already for our pre-show that we did. And that's exclusive to Patreon and YouTube memberships. But yeah, so I think that you know how back this past year you had the remake, the Doug Liman remake of Roadhouse, right?
Oh yeah. With Jake and a little cameo from Post.
A little cameo from Post Malone. Yeah, I would say
it's funny. Not too long ago, I went back and I have a job that I do a lot of stuff, but it's like doing stuff with my hands, and so I could put headphones in and do stuff while I'm working, and it's my boss doesn't care, and so I have a lot of time to just listen to podcasts and stuff. And I went back and listened to the Joe Rogan episode with Post Malone back in, I'm just taking a guess, 2020.
Right.
Maybe 2019. It was quite a while ago. Maybe 2019. I actually think it was 2019. And in it, he talks a lot about that cameo being in fighting Jake Gyllenhaal in Roadhouse, but he's not allowed to. At that point, they hadn't even announced that they were doing Roadhouse, and so he's clearly talking about it. He's like, I was fighting this guy and I had my shirt off, and he's talking about being fit, and he's like talking about, because he's still pudgy Post at that point,
right?
And
well, he's less pudgy Post. Post got relatively pudgy for a while.
I know, that's what I'm saying. No, in the movie, he's pudgy Post.
Not as pudgy. He was starting the weight loss process.
A little bit, but I think he was talking about like that being a huge thing about like, getting in shape and stuff like that. And he's clearly talking about Roadhouse. He's just not allowed to say that it was Roadhouse because they hadn't even announced it at that point.
Right.
Like, it's interesting.
Yeah, it is interesting. However, the whole controversy with Doug Liman and Prime Video, all right, was that they didn't. They sort of
Hey, well,
promised.
you're jumping in really quick.
Yeah. We got a lot to cover here. All right. So the big controversy was that they kind of alluded to promising Doug Liman a theatrical release. However, Prime Video does not have a ton of theatrical releases under their belt. I don't know if they have any. Do you know, does Prime Video have any theatrical releases under their belt? I haven't heard of any.
Let me think.
Let me Google it real quick
Yeah,
because
I
I'm
can't
pretty
think of
sure
any off the top of my head, but yeah, I can't think of any.
theatrical release. Because I'm under the assumption that they don't have any.
Apple is not Amazon, but Apple TV's starting to get some. They're sponsoring theatrical releases for things. That's more in the past like year or so.
Right. Actually, I don't think that there's been any theatrical releases. I don't think there's been any theatrical releases for Prime Video. Not that we're aware of. However, they basically said to Doug Liman, "Hey, we're gonna probably release your thing in theaters, this Roadhouse movie." And then once he finished it, they're like, "No,
No.
we're not gonna." Now we've made the assumption that it wasn't a good enough movie, and so maybe it just wasn't good enough to convince, Jeff Bezos that they gave a private screening of the movie to on his boat or whatever, as well as other executives at Amazon Prime. And maybe it just didn't convince them to want to drop the money to try to push for theatrical release. And we've looked at the quality of the film. It's kind of a fun film, but ultimately a bit underwhelming. It's not like a masterpiece. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so maybe it didn't earn the right to be a theatrical release, but it definitely was filmed to be one. So recently, actually the past week, this is huge news. If you Google Amazon Prime Video, this is all that comes in is news about this. There's like Reddit talking about this. It's like everywhere, okay?
Yeah.
So Amazon wants to grow to 16 theatrical releases per year by 2027.
Okay.
This is kind of an interesting approach because, one, they don't really have any serious theatrical releases under their belt.
Okay.
I and a lot of people have always seen Amazon Prime Video as being kind of the redheaded
Streaming.
stepchild in the Hollywood world. It's like wanting to be a part of the system, but not really being a part of the system,
Yeah. So I got a lot of thoughts, and we can kind of go into each
Yeah,
thing because
we
we
got
got a
time.
full podcast. But I kind of jumped the gun a little bit by saying Apple TV's starting to put sponsor movies for theatrical release. So it seems like there's I can't say the word. Competing companies doing that now. And so, I mean, Amazon is huge in the merchandising space, but Apple is huge in the tech space. And so they're both like huge companies that are, branching out, trying to get more and, a huge marketing and, money making aspect of today's world is entertainment. And so it seems like they're trying to do something there. You know what I think Amazon should do? And this is a scary thing, but maybe Amazon should take a totally different route. I know they already have their streaming service, and they've got Freevee, which is a free version of Amazon.
Yes.
But maybe they should create a platform for creators to put stuff on their platform.
Like YouTube?
Like in YouTube, but maybe an indie film platform.
Well,
What if
here's
they
the
did
crazy
that?
thing. So they kind of already do.
Yeah.
Yeah, if a like an indie filmmaker, because I have a couple friends who've done this, where you can watch their film for free if you have Prime Video. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So they have an option for you to basically put your indie film on the Prime Video network, where you can watch it for free. I think you can watch it for free even if you don't have Prime Video. I think it's like a free option where basically it's a little bit more difficult than uploading it to YouTube, but it's essentially the same thing, where people have their indie films on Prime Video and they don't have to have like an official, like, big extensive contract with Prime Video. It's just kind of like you can upload it and it be available for people. Now, with that, it actually is very popular. So people don't talk about it much, but when it comes
Yeah.
to the free content or the use, so you know what I mean? Like, you watched that movie Velocipaster, didn't you?
Yeah.
It's the same idea. Is people who just make crazy indie films or just weird, wacky stuff can get it up on places like Freevee,
Tubi.
sort of, Tubi, kind of, and then definitely Prime Video, where you can just search it and it's there for
Mhm.
you. So it's kind of like this sort of open network for you to put your films, and
Yeah.
it's a little bit more prestigious on the face than YouTube, because YouTube is just like, oh, it's YouTube.
Yeah.
It's a YouTube video.
Um. It.
But
Yeah.
I wanted to get
I want. Yeah. Let's go back to
Well, I
the
wanted to
theaters
hit
a
your
little bit.
point. I wanted to hit your point about Apple, because interestingly enough, along with the news about Prime Video, this came out about Apple's Wolves, right? So it's the Brad Pitt, George Clooney kind of spinoff from Ocean's 11, that
Sure.
Apple, they're actually rolling back their plans for a big theatrical release on this. And I think a big part of that is because with things like Napoleon, with a lot of the films that
Yeah,
they put out last year, it didn't work financially in
I'm
theaters.
Apple TV and Apple the company are doing some interesting things that nobody seems like is talking about when it comes to the entertainment space.
There's not buzz. It's they don't
There's
have
not.
they don't have an exciting marketing for this
I've I've
at
never
all.
the only thing that I feel like has ever been advertised to me and tried to push was C with Jason Momoa, and
Mhm.
that was a while ago, and, like, I didn't watch it because it wasn't that interesting looking to me. It
Yeah.
was like Bird Box kind of, and so
Right.
you just can't see, but, hey, Apple TV's doing their own thing kinda on the side. It's not like, Paramount Plus has their own thing and they don't really advertise, but they're not really doing much either. They'll have, like, one show, like
Mm.
Mayor of Kingstown, and that's it, but everything else is just kind of not that exciting, but Apple TV has some exciting things. They just aren't really forefront in advertising
And
or buzz.
at the end of this podcast, we are going to theorize about this a little bit, with these different studios and tech companies, and what's going to be kind of we guess is the future of them, based on what we've seen in the past, what we see currently, and then moving forward. Okay, but this for Apple TV, what they plan on doing with this Wolves film is Apple has changed its plans for Wolves to have a wide theatrical release before it lands on Apple TV Plus. It instead will receive a limited theatrical release September 20th, and then debut globally on Apple TV Plus on Friday, September 27th. Now, we also know that a ton of people do not have Apple TV Plus. So what I think the goal there is to basically say, look, last year our theatrical releases for Apple movies didn't go well. We spent a lot of money and we didn't have like a lot of traction. So what we're going to do is we're going to try to focus our energy back onto getting people onto the streaming service and see what happens, okay? And the problem is I have upped for Apple TV Plus. I've gotten an Apple TV Plus subscription and then canceled it 3 times.
Yeah.
And that's not a good number. I've done it 3 times because once you get an Apple TV Plus subscription, you watch the movie or the show that you wanted to watch, and then there's nothing else on the platform to keep you there. There may be
Yeah.
one other thing you watch over a few weeks, but then it's like nothing here is good or worth keeping me here. And so you're kind of just left at this place like, am I really going to spend the money on this? Because it's a little overpriced for the library that they have, you know? And so
Yeah.
this is a big problem that Apple has, and that it makes me wonder if they have the sustainability to even stay in the movie creation and series creation business, because they haven't made any real bangers. They just
Yeah.
haven't.
Can we? I want to backtrack a little bit to talk a little bit more about theaters. We've talked about theaters a lot on this podcast, on this YouTube channel, but yesterday something came up that I was listening to, and it was interesting. I was listening to, I guess I'm not going to shout out the podcast because I don't really care for the podcast.
Go
I don't
ahead.
like it. But there was Peter Dinklage was on a podcast
Yep.
talking specifically about his stuff, something new that he's coming out with, and also, Game of Thrones and things like that. And he's normally not on interview based things like that or podcasts. So, but they were talking to him, and he was like talking about theaters specifically. And he was like, did you listen to the episode?
I did, not the whole thing. I don't think I
Okay.
reached the theater conversation.
Okay. Yeah. It was closer to the end, but he specifically was talking about what got him kind of into filmmaking and being an actor and stuff. And he was like, yeah, when I was a kid, I went and saw Star Wars like 5 times in the theater because I loved it. And he said, he was like, we showed up and we were the first ones there in line to go watch the movie. And he was like, the only person that was there in front of us was like a single guy in his 40s who like has nothing else to do, that's just his diehard fan, probably wearing like cargo shorts and a button-up Hawaiian shirt. And and he was like, as a kid, I loved that, and going to the theater felt like this community-based thing that was just exciting for people that were like nerds and just who loved filmmaking. And then he was saying like he had a conversation or somebody with Steven Spielberg, and Spielberg was like, why don't we just put the movie out in theaters for the diehard fans, but maybe not as long, like, sometimes we have to wait 8 to like 12 weeks before it comes out on video, on streaming. Why don't we just put it out for, 2-3 weeks in theaters, and then put it out in streaming for everybody to watch? Because some people don't want to go to the movie theaters and watch, but there is a lot of diehard fans that still want to go to the theater and watch. And I think that kind of brings up a lot of interesting topics, because like I can resonate with wanting to be the first one there to watch it. I remember we talked about this actually last week, was the midnight showings. You would go at 11:55 at night so that you could go watch it when it came out at midnight. And they used to do that, and that was so much fun. And that was the diehard fans. But then now they don't even do that. And so because of like, safety stuff and all that, they've gotten rid of that. And with getting rid of that, they've gotten rid of the excitement, the willingness to go out at midnight to go watch a movie that you're really excited for. But now, even like, if we want to just talk about things specifically, are these movies that they're making good enough to get me up or keep me up till midnight to go watch it? Am I excited for movies because there's something new and exciting? There's a new Star Wars that is coming out, or not even just a new Star Wars. There's a new, fantasy thing that's coming out that's new and exciting, and you want to go and watch it 5 times in the theater.
Yeah, no, I don't know if we're there. I mean, the only thing that I think people were showing up for multiple viewings for in like the past many years is Dune Part 2 and Oppenheimer. I think that's the only thing that people
Yeah.
have been watching multiple times in theaters. And
The
so they
last thing I watched multiple times was Top Gun. That was the only, like, exciting
and
movie
that was
to
like
me.
3 years ago, you
Yeah.
know? So there's it's doesn't have the same culture. So actually that goes well back to this conversation around Amazon Prime. So if we go back to this, we're talking about output, right? We're talking about output from these tech companies. So first off, I just got to say this. So 16 theatrical releases per year is kind of crazy, and this is where they're kind of starting from. So there's this guy Mike Hopkins, who I guess is the chief, Amazon's Prime Video chief, Mike Hopkins, is quoted, and this is something that he says, all right, we don't want to have a salt burn and then nothing else for the audience for 6 months. So we have to change our statement. So I think Saltburn did come out in theaters this past year. So they do have a couple, especially in the past year, 2023, of theatrical releases, which is kind of even more crazy that they didn't give one to Doug Liman. However, this is kind of where they're starting from. They basically want to have a movie. If they're talking about 16, we're talking about multiple movies in theaters at the same time, because there's only in a month period. So there's only 12 months in a year. And if they want to have 16 movies in theaters every year, that's kind of a crazy number. And I'm guessing they probably made that number based on like, oh, we want to have like around Christmas, we want to have an action blockbuster epic, and we also want to have like a holiday movie in theaters around Christmas time. You know what I mean? So that's probably why they came up with 16 rather than just once a month for 12. However, that's not, I don't feel, so here's my initial feeling for this is I feel like Amazon Prime Video works in logistics and logic and on paper planning, and they have no idea about what it takes to actually find the right creators and invest in the right things to make something that people want to actually watch, right?
Yeah.
And that's a serious problem, because that's what Netflix has done with their films department, where they made the big mistake of giving Zack Snyder like full control and making his own epic. He came up with Rebel Moon, and apparently I haven't seen it because I hated Rebel Moon. The
Yeah.
theatrical streaming version was so bad. I don't even want to come close to touching the Zack Snyder cuts of those, which apparently they're already out, or at least the first one is out on Netflix. I don't even want to watch it because it's so bad. If
Yeah,
people that don't,
it was there was so much hype around it, and then it was so boring.
it wasn't just boring. It was horrible acting. The story was dull. The everything was just poorly done. So a big part of me is thinking like, hey, there is a element of vetting your creators and your writers and the stories themselves to actually see what is going to be good. Because if you're just like on paper, we're going to have 16 theatrical releases in the next 3 years. What's 2027? It's 2024,
Yeah.
25, 26, 27. In the next 3.5 years, we want to have 16 movies in theaters, but they're not even taking into consideration in a serious way how many of those 16 movies are going to be flops
Yeah.
and how much
I
it costs to have these movies in the theaters, you know?
I I've been thinking about this off screen, off podcast. Haven't really talked about this, but I've been thinking about this a lot lately, just personally, of
Okay.
why things are such a flop today. And I have a theory. Hear me out.
I'm hearing
I
you.
think because of social media, there's a rock star mentality. We see people like, okay, let's say, these big name actors are getting
Mhm.
on podcasts like Peter Dinklage, and they're talking about these off when they're not shooting, they have all these like this rock star kind of mentality of how they live their life, of like they're so famous, they're rich, they're buying huge houses, they're buying huge things, and the average everyday person is like, I want to be able to do that. Let me get into the film industry. When I don't think that's the way people should look at the film industry. You have to
Mhm.
think about the film industry as this. You have to think about it as you're working 16-hour days.
Mhm.
You're working for 6 months straight, and
Yeah.
then you'll probably get like a month or 2 off, but you're
Yep.
working for 6 months straight and you're getting down, you're, waking up, grabbing a coffee, and then going and shooting this rain sequence, Helm's Deep, where it's raining and you're there for 3 months, cold, wet, and it's miserable, and you're literally just pushing through it because you wanna get the best shot and you wanna get this really cool, uh,
It's not glamorous,
ba
is what you're
battle
saying.
scene for people to watch. That's the coolest thing you've ever seen, but while you're there, it's not glamorous, and then after the 6 months of hard work, and then, maybe 4 months of editing or something like that, then there's 2 months in there where you get the payoff. You get paid for the movie, and yeah, you get to party, you get to have your fun life for, like, 2
You
months
also you also
before
get
you
to
go
be a
to your next
part.
project.
Well, like, Peter Dinklage wasn't in Lord of the Rings,
No.
but what you're insinuating there is if they happen to be a part of something special like Lord of the Rings, then you hit legendary status. Like you were a part of something that was legendary in cinema history. But those are few and far between. I think right now we haven't had anything legendary in cinema history.
Well, I mean, no, yeah, I'm not even talking about specifically, like, the creation of it. I'm thinking about, like, the actor in itself of how we view the process of filmmaking and making that kind of stuff. It's like everybody sees the 2 months of the actor having all the money from doing the hard work and partying up, having fun, going to the red carpets, and just being famous.
Being
But they
celebrity, right?
Yeah, and everybody's like, "I want that. That looks cool." But they don't want to put in the hard work. The exciting part is for them is they don't have any excitement to go and film anything. That's not
No.
what they want. They just want the famous portion at the end, and I think social media specifically and being so connected and seeing these actors that we weren't so much into their lives before because of social media or podcasting or whatever. You didn't know how, The Rock lived his life outside of you just saw him on screen and or you saw him wrestling and then that's all you saw him. You didn't see all these like every day see him like, you know, being famous or his everyday life. You
Yes.
see that with actors, 20 years ago. So I think social media has skewed us to where people just want that and they don't want the hard work of making a movie.
Well,
They
this is what I think. This is what I think about the whole celebrity conversation is they are regular people who know how to act like somebody else and they do that and you're right. They a lot of times they rough it. Like even if you're in a studio on a green screen, you're being very physical. You have to freaking do the same like Captain America has to hold that shield and do the same like punch another guy in a
Mhm.
green screen so they can animate an alien. Punch it and they're sitting there for 3 to 4 hours doing the same somersault punch and then let's go back. Let's do it again. Somersault punch. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
that is as boring and
Yeah.
monotonous and and uh and silly. And it's hard work. And the thing is, the only reason these people are famous, the only reason that we put them in this like status of like kingship or emperors or empresses is because these studios have the money to invest 200, 300 million dollars to
Yeah.
put that actor's face dressed up as Captain America all over the world on every
Yeah.
TV, on every phone, on every billboard. These studios spent 200 million dollars just to get this person super popular to watch, or just to get this movie super popular. Then once you have all of those people seeing it, now almost everybody in the world has seen your face. But the thing is, they're still just regular people. So really,
Yeah.
if you could act in a movie, you can act in an indie film project like this Peter Dinklage. It's not really indie, but it's more indie, right? That he's promoting this new kind of like gothic timepiece movie that Peter Dinklage is coming out with. And unless they have crazy good marketing, it's just an indie film, and there's going to be a lot of
Yeah.
people that don't watch it. It just depends on how much money you have around the marketing, on what level of fame you hit. And these studios have to be backing it. So yeah, you're right. These people are just regular people that do hard work and do, honestly, most of their working days are boring. They're
Well,
so
that's the thing.
boring.
I'm saying the reason why we have bad content is because they're not, the people who are starting to get into these jobs are not people that are willing to do the boring stuff. They want the glamour. And so when it comes to the boring stuff, they're like, let's do this as easy and as, quickly as possible. And they're skipping over the portion that makes good content.
They're skipping over the artistic expression.
Yeah, because they just
right?
want the fame and glory. And
And
they want that because of social media, or they want that because of they see that with somebody else. They see that you can, if you just, do a podcast for an hour here and then do your little shoots, then you can get the fame, and you're not actually like putting the work into it.
well, it's definitely yes, you're right. It's a conveyor belt of creativity, and that's what Amazon Prime is doing with this idea.
Mhm.
It's a conveyor belt of creativity, but when you make a conveyor belt, ultimately, it's not about creativity anymore. It's about freaking formatted content that's not good ultimately.
Yeah.
So here's a couple of the perks that Amazon Prime has.
I don't mean to cut you off. Are we gonna thank the Patreon at some point?
Yes, we
Okay.
are. But don't let, we'll get to that. Here's some of the perks that Amazon Prime has. They have a never-ending stream of money through Amazon Prime that has nothing to do with Prime Video.
Mhm.
Interestingly enough, I think as of right now, and probably for a long time, Prime Video doesn't have to make $1 for it to stay alive. Because if it's pulling from the larger pool of money that it has a crazy stream of, then it doesn't have to actually be successful. It can do this. And again, this is a part of me that's thinking maybe this is the future of filmmaking, because the movie industry has always been volatile and it's always been on the verge of collapse. Every studio is constantly in this state of, unless we put out a banger this year, we might be going under. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's been like that forever, the film industry. I mean, because you have to not just make the big budget back, you have to make back the big marketing budget, and you have to make back the budget for future projects and the losses that you lost on flops. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's a really, in some ways, this makes me think, although I hate this might have to be the future of how business in entertainment works, because unless there's something that's going to be consistent and steady and successful on a high level, like e-commerce through Amazon, then that can float the up and down failures and successes of entertainment without it being a constant state of, are we going to fail this year? Are we going to go under? You know what I mean? And that might be what keeps it alive, but ultimately I think it drains it of creativity and the lack of experience that Amazon has with working with creatives and creative storytelling. They don't have a lot of data to know what's going to work. So we're just going to
Yeah.
get these weird projects, kind of like Netflix did with Zack Snyder, where they invest a ton of money into something that ultimately nobody wants or enjoys for a
Yeah.
long time before they have good data.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. I that's all I could say. We kind of nailed it in the coffin. It's because that's what it is. It's a coffin. It's a
It
coffin.
is kind of a coffin, and we're gonna come back to Amazon Prime and kind of these other companies as we kind of do like this ranking thing. But not before we hit one other piece of valuable news, which kind of is like a parlay from this conversation. But before we do that, let's
Parlay.
thank the Patreon. It's actually a
Yeah.
YouTube member.
Oh, okay.
So
How do you pronounce your name, Joseph?
Libya Azarea. I
Yeah.
actually, if I'm being honest, I did look up this name, how to pronounce the last name here,
Yeah.
because it is Colombian, and there is an R, Mazura, something like
Yes.
that. All right,
Yes.
I
Yeah.
very much apologize for not being able to have a clear pronunciation of your last name. But look, all that matters is you chose to support a couple of little white boys.
What?
A few of
A
us,
little.
you
Hey, I'm 2% Italian apparently.
right. Look, it doesn't matter. We love you a whole lot, and we're very thankful that you've chosen to support us over on YouTube. You didn't have to. You could have just
Mhm.
watched our video and moved on, but you didn't. And it means a lot to us. It really does. And whether you use it or not, Libya, you can also join and get the perks that we have for podcasts like pre-shows or these
Ooh,
podcasts early.
that's
Joshua
cool.
and Wyatt also have done like a lot of watch parties. If you've never
Oh, yeah.
experienced a watch party, I would recommend it because it's like watching a movie with friends.
Yeah.
Um, that like if you really enjoy a movie, what's a recent movie that you did? Don't do the one that you don't say. What is it called? Freaking the recent one you guys did.
We've done Mission Impossibles. We've done, um,
Jurassic Park. We've done
Jurassic
Jurassic Park.
Park. We've done Godzilla. We've done, Gremlins. We've done
What's the
Highlander.
Highlander? Yeah, we've
we've
done a
done a
lot.
lot. We've
There,
done
there's
quite a
there's
few.
more. There's more than you can probably think of right now, but it's all available on Patreon and YouTube memberships. It also is just general support. So you're saying like, hey, while we're growing and while we're investing, we give you what we can as perks, but ultimately we're here for just
Yeah.
you just want to be a part of supporting to help get this
Think
moving and off the ground, right?
think of it like this, you pull up your streaming service that you go on quite
Mhm.
regularly, and you're like, "Man, that Jurassic Park movie's on there. I've seen it a million times. I don't really wanna watch it again. There's nothing I want to watch on here." Instead of going and renting a movie for $5,
Mhm.
like a different movie that you've probably seen before, but you're just like, "Oh, I'll watch it again. I'm gonna rent it." Get our membership and then watch the movie you've watched before, but from a new perspective because we're gonna be there watching it with you.
Yeah, yeah. And so you should definitely check out our memberships, but also it's just for
And it's
good
only
general support.
$3.99, so it's less than renting a movie.
I what
It's less than renting a new movie.
it's less than if you go on Amazon Prime right now and you rent like bike riders, things
Yeah.
like freaking $20 to rent it.
Yeah.
Where if you have Peacock, it just started streaming on Peacock, or you could buy the movie for like $24 for a digital
Hey, what
version,
is this?
right?
Why is this is not an ad for bike riders here.
I'm just saying, look, the streaming and renting is all over the place and it's crazy. And you know how you just kind of have streaming to have it. Well,
Yeah.
it's only $3.99 a month. Uh, it's less than a cup of coffee, and it really adds a lot of value to what we're doing on YouTube and creating content as we theorize and create more enjoyable content for everybody. And
Yeah.
we're really trying to branch out and try new things that I'm sure you'll enjoy. So consider supporting us. The link's in the description for Patreon, or you can join the memberships here on YouTube. You get the same things. Thank you, Libya, for choosing to support us over on YouTube memberships. Now, before we get to kind of like looking at the future of what we're estimating is going to happen, all right?
Mhm.
I want to quickly talk about some news around Paramount and Warner Brothers, because this is kind of, you're talking about coffins earlier. This is kind
Yep.
of another coffin that honestly was kind of dumb. Like some poor decision making. This also really speaks a lot into what I was saying earlier about how the volatility of movie studios, right? Investing in stuff that flops, investing in stuff that they shouldn't have invested in, and taking a
Hmm.
gamble. And it's kind of been a part of the movie industry forever. Well, this is specifically around cable, all right? So the headline reads, and now Paramount has lowered the value of its cable channels by 6 billion. All right? So this summer's hottest trends revisiting the value of our cable channels down, way down. On Wednesday, Warner Bros. Discovery realized its cable network were worth 9 billion less than it had originally thought.
Woo, that's a lot of money.
On Thursday, Paramount Global reduced the book value of its own cable channel by nearly 6 billion. All right. Warner Brothers Discovery's internal audit was triggered by its loss of NBA rights. Paramount recorded the goodwill impairment charge based on what Skydance is paying for the company and its network. These changes do not impact cash flow. With the giant accounting maneuver, Paramount uh, Global posted adjusted earnings at 54 cents per share. So basically, it took a big, with this past week. You know how the stock market crashed for one day. This wasn't the thing that triggered it, obviously, but this is kind of like a part of the loss in value and different stuff. And basically, all this is saying is that Warner Brothers Discovery, as well as Paramount, and Paramount's been really struggling the past year
Yeah.
a lot, and this is just another nail in that coffin, is they have grossly overestimated the value of what cable is. And if you're saying, like, we know that cable network is dwindling and dwindling and dwindling, and we also know that places like Disney is trying to do this combo package with Hulu, Disney Plus, Max, and other things, right? Where it basically costs like freaking $70 or something crazy like that, which is just the cable equivalent, except it's not through cable, it's just through internet, it's just through streaming. And they're trying to replace cable with streaming, but cable TV is just dwindling down. And if you thought it was down earlier, as far as like it was on its way down, well, it just fell off a cliff this past week.
Yeah.
This new revelation between Paramount and Warner Bros. Discovery. I wanted you to say this because there's still so much around cable in the world of streaming. There's so many decisions financially that are based around the idea of, well, what can we put on cable? And it just really solidifies the point that nobody's paying for this anymore, and that it's very soon, it is going to hit zero as far as cable, right? Very soon it's going to hit zero, and there's going to be zero money and zero future in cable TV.
Yeah, I mean, we've got streaming and the internet, so why do we need it?
That's a good point. It's being replaced, and it's also overpriced for what it is. Now, there comes a problem with this, where Warner Bros. Has a huge investment into, cable TV. And apparently Paramount, with this whole problem, Paramount's planning on laying off, I think, 25% of its staff when it comes to the branch for their cable investment, right? That's a lot of jobs lost. So the question is, the market has a huge, and even look, cable channels that don't know how to pivot or don't have a really hefty contract with streaming services. So like CNN's going to stick around because they have big contracts with different organizations. And when you follow the train, it leads to like places like Disney and BlackRock and different stuff that fund them. So, but like these independent local, like we both interned at WBTV, right?
Okay. I guess plug them.
It's a station out of Charlotte, but it's technically a local station, and
Yep.
they are a facilitator of a larger network that they're kind of a branch of.
Well,
But
I didn't
when
intern. I
you worked there, I interned there. But all that to say is like there's a lot of jobs, there's a lot of infrastructure that is relying on the cable network, the cable infrastructure, the cable money to not crash like this, you know? And if they don't have a successful way to make the jump to digital, then they just fall apart and all those jobs are gone, right? And
Yeah.
then these people don't know how to get hired onto streaming because streaming does something differently. What do you think is kind of a solution here? Because I have like a lot of theories, but I wanted to hear yours. What's a solution here? If people are being laid off and they don't have any experience in the streaming entertainment world to jump ship to like the new industry, what are we going to do here? You know, what's going to happen?
If they can't jump ship and go to the new industry.
Well, think about a meteorologist. A
Okay.
meteorologist is they tell the news about the weather,
Yeah.
and they've built their entire life career. They built their entire working world around this idea of being on broadcast cable, telling the people who watch cable in the morning the weather for the day.
Mhm.
When cable collapses, how do they pivot to streaming? Do they just open a freaking YouTube channel and tell the weather on a YouTube? You know what I mean? Like,
I mean, maybe,
how do
but
they survive? These are
there's things
people, you
like,
know?
Apple or the weather app on your phone that will do just as good of a job, I guess. So
Yes.
I don't know. You're gonna have to pivot and do something else, maybe. Maybe you can. Um, I don't know. I don't got any answers for you on this, but that's where it comes down to. Like everything's competitive. You
Mhm.
if it's not working, well, too bad for you. You got to find something that'll work. You got to keep innovating, and if you don't, then
You
you're gonna
die.
get left behind.
And it's not just the businesses that are dying, it's people that have invested
Yeah,
decades of their life into a business that is dying, you know?
I mean, but that's always happened, though. I mean,
Yeah, that's true. That's why
it's
strikes are
always
happening all over the
yeah.
place now.
This has been happening since before we were born.
The
People that were
textile industry, remember that?
the paper industry, like a paper. You go and deliver the paper every morning.
Mhm.
People don't do that anymore because people look online.
The printing
And so,
press.
yeah, it
The
it
printing press was
extra,
revolutionary, and now
extra.
it's almost obsolete.
Well, extra, extra, you're fired.
That's the headline.
Yeah,
And this is a dangerous game to be playing in the broadcast world. I'm just gonna say it because it's more dangerous this week than it was last week
yeah,
because we just got a very more clear picture of what
very
cable
much.
television is worth, and two huge industries, Warner
I mean, but
Brothers and Paramount.
as people,
Their investment in cable just went down by billions of dollars.
as people, though, we're not supposed to just do the same thing for our whole life. I mean, it's become the American dream to get into a job when you're in your early 20s, after college, maybe invest in a 401k and just show up to your job every day for 40 plus years, and then when you're 60, you leave that job, you retire, and you live off your 401k and your
Mm,
retirement, and everything's dandy. You have your house that you invested in with your wife, and then you have your kids. That's the American dream, but you can't do that anymore. You can't just get into a job and work there for 40 plus years and then come out and hope that the company that you worked for and everything just is so great for you and is going to take care of you when you're old, that's not going to work anymore. That's not. There's no such thing as the American dream anymore.
That's a good positive message. I have to say this. After our previous conversation about Prime Video and the company of Amazon, and then seeing this where you have one going up and having higher aspirations, and then one just dwindling down and falling off cliffs as they go downward. I kind of think that maybe to answer the question I was posing earlier about what do you do, I think in the process of Prime Video, Amazon maybe creating solutions to all of these jobs becoming obsolete, creating
Yeah.
solutions to saying like, hey, we have on our streaming platform, we have the weather. Do you like traditional weather, like meteorologist coverage, but you don't want to pay for cable? Look, on Amazon Prime, we have that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And all of a sudden you can stream that same type of content, and it might save the industry. It might save millions of jobs along the way where they go from Warner Brothers Discovery to Amazon Prime or whatever and work under their umbrella. And Amazon has the money for it. But the problem here is in the process of doing that, we're making Amazon a monopoly, you know? And there's not going to be any ability to have competition. So although it's going to be here to save the careers and to save the industry because they have a never-ending supply of cash, we created a monopoly. In our ignorance and in our fear and in our scramble to survive, we create a monopoly of Amazon, right?
Yeah.
Which they already kind of are a monopoly on some level, but if we keep doing this more and more, it's going to become one. And that kind of probably leads well to our what I've been teasing for the whole time, right? Is I want to take a look at some of the big entertainment and tech giants.
Is this what you were talking about, the ranking or something?
It's sort of a ranking. So let me share my. I got the old Photoshop pulled up. So let me
Photoshop. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
That's a big
when
tech.
when I pull up Photoshop, I'm serious. Let me share my whole screen because let's see, stop sharing and then share. Here's the thing. I'm always getting confused because when you're working with StreamYard, you always got to
they're not
unshare
a
things
yet.
and whatnot. They're not a sponsor yet. All right. So this is kind of rudimentary, but take a look. So we're gonna guess.
We're gonna rank the big corporations and but wait a minute, we can't put YouTube on there because they're gonna see this if we rank them bad, and then they're gonna demonetize our channel. They're gonna make it so we don't.
They won't. No,
we
they
don't
won't.
get
No, they won't.
views.
No,
They're
they
not
won't.
gonna recommend us. So
No, they won't.
YouTube is number one for streaming, and
Hush,
is
hush.
definitely not dead.
All right, so look, we're going to guess. So we're talking about 50 years. 50 years previous to
Netflix is
today.
dead.
Hold on. Shh. Let me get through this intro so the audience knows what we're doing before you freaking interrupt me. So 50 years ago from 2024 was 1974. All right?
Okay.
So 50 years from today, I forgot to do the math on that. What is that? 19 is that 2074? No, 2074, right?
Yeah.
2074.
You got that
50
quick
years
math.
from today. Well, it's just makes sense. 50 years previous.
Well, they're not saying
half of 100 is 50. All right, so we are in the middle. 50 years past. Think about what the world was in 1974 in the world of media. We were talking about cable just a minute ago. Cable was the top dog in 1974. It was because you had a handful of shows on cable, and everybody in the world was watching those few shows. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I was watching. I saw a clip on something of Rob Lowe being on some podcasts, and he was talking about some show that he was on when he was a kid, because there was only a handful of shows, easily got 14 million views per episode. He was like,
likely. 80 million an episode because
Yeah, because there was only a handful of shows, and so
yeah.
if there was something new coming out that was popular, everybody was sitting down and watching it. They were, grabbing their popcorn and saying, "It's Tuesday night. We're gonna watch the Cosby Show."
Also, inside of people's homes, they had a monopoly because there wasn't VHSs in 1974.
Mm,
There was not DVDs. There was not streaming. The only thing that you had inside people's home was radio and cable TV. You know
mhm.
what I mean? And so everyone chose for cable TV because it's a lot more fun to watch something than to listen to something, right?
Yeah.
So cable TV had the monopoly. So yeah, it was in 1974, cable TV was the monopoly. In
Can
50
yeah,
years, cable
can we
TV
bring
is
it
not going to exist.
can we bring it back? So explain the rules to this, because
So this, what we're doing is we are going to say, assuming that streaming, so internet streaming
Okay.
and the theater experience. The reason I put the theater experience in here is because we have had so many discussions about this back and forth on if theaters are going to exist in the next 50 years. And we kind of land on the idea of, yes, it's going to look very different, but it is still going to exist because people want the experience of going out on the town and watching something on a big scale, right?
Sure.
So if we have streaming still exists in 50 years and theaters still exist in 50 years, and then there's a dead category, and we're going to look at some of the entertainment media kings mixed with the tech company kings. See who's going to be dead in 50 years or best guess, and who's going to be in streaming and theaters, who's going to own it. So we kind of have 1, 2, and 3 for streaming and 1, 2, and 3 for theaters. We don't have to fill all these out. We can be honest. If we think there's going to be more here dead than there's going to be in theaters, we don't have to fill in these 1, 2, and 3 points, but let's go ahead and try this. All right. So if we talk about in 50 years, who's going to be number 1 for streaming? For the people who are on audio, here's the list of the companies we have. YouTube, which is technically Google, but YouTube. Prime Video. Hold on, let me finish this. Disney, Apple, Netflix, X, Meta, Warner Brothers. And the reason I only have Disney and Warner Brothers on here as far as like the traditional ones, because they're the biggest. There's not really ones that are any bigger, and a lot of the studios are versions of them. So like Max is a version of Warner Brothers. Like they're ultimately owned. Hulu is 60% owned by Disney. So like
Sure.
that's what I'm saying. That's why I don't have everybody on here. But looking at this little list, this is like right now who's probably going to be the survivors of the future.
So for streaming, I think Apple, YouTube.
Okay, I gotta say this. Why hold on? Why Apple? Because Apple seems to obviously not have it together at all.
No. They are together. They're just in the background. You don't realize because you see the phone. They're together.
You honestly think Apple? Well, there's always been
There's already been rumors and talks that like
Apple will buy Disney or something.
Apple will buy Disney. There's already been rumors about that. And so in 50 years, you don't think, even if it's not Disney, let's say Warner Brothers gets into some crisis, or, we find out that the lizard man, Mark Zuckerberg, was diddling Diddy under the table. You don't think that there's a big controversy and Apple's going to swoop in, we'll buy Meta from you for $1 billion because it's not worth that anymore. You diddle Diddy under the table.
You diddle Diddy.
Under the table. And so, the company's going to die if we don't go and buy it. You don't think Apple's going to do something like that?
No, I do think Apple's probably going to do something like that. But on its own, it can't be streaming. But with the exception of what you're saying of they swoop in and acquire something, then they will be the owners of something that's ultimately on the way to dying. I personally think it's going to be probably Disney. That's what I think.
You don't think right now someone involved with one of these companies are diddling Diddy on the side?
No, these companies are way more powerful than Diddy.
I mean,
Um,
who knows?
these companies are some of these companies are so powerful,
I mean, they
like
are.
Prime Video, like X. Remember, X is Elon Musk. He is one of the uh,
Yeah.
he's one of the most wealthy men in the world. And it would not surprise me if a lot of these company owners, like Jeff Bezos, has either had someone killed or at least someone tuned up. You know what I mean? I
Sure.
think there's some dirty stuff that's like mafia type crap that's behind some of these companies. And obviously when you get to things like BlackRock and stuff that ultimately owns everything here, um, and it's a different conversation. But let's just stay in this work in this realm. Um, so you have Apple. You think Apple's going to be streaming? I'm going to keep Apple in the middle on 2 for streaming just because I kind of feel like it's a big question mark for them still.
I don't know.
And we don't know what's going to happen, but we can guess they're going to be at least present and not dead for streaming or the entertainment world. They're going to own something, right? And I honestly think, look, I don't I want to put YouTube at the top of streaming because I don't think, even though Amazon Prime might be a monopoly, I don't think that anything can compete with the entire world. You
I
know?
I don't I would agree out of this list, YouTube is probably top for streaming, but I don't think YouTube is going to be in 70, 50 years the streaming because I think YouTube is a younger generation watches YouTube. So like the next generation or like the next 2, whatever you want to say is in 50 years, they're going to have a new thing that might be owned by Google, that might be owned by Apple. So who knows who's gonna own it? But I think out of this list right now, YouTube. But I don't
I'm
think it's
pretty
gonna be YouTube. I
confident.
think it's gonna be something new.
Well, here's the thing. I'm pretty confident that YouTube is going to be huge and continue to grow and be successful and number one for the next 20 years. I'm pretty confident for 20 years. 50 years, less confident. But
Yeah,
I'm pretty confident for the next 20 years, right? I
yeah,
think
no,
YouTube
definitely.
is a
Because I
safe.
think there's a generation that is on YouTube, and
Mhm.
I think it's a younger generation, and it's always kind of been a younger generation. But as those people grow up, they're still gonna be watching YouTube, but eventually they're gonna, there's gonna be a new generation coming up that's gonna want something different.
Interesting. So, if you were going to say what company is going to own that new thing that's on this list, it's probably a company that doesn't exist yet, but if you were to guess if it had to be one of these, who would it be?
Apple. I already kinda said that.
You think
Either
Apple's
either
got that
Apple
amount
or
of smarts?
either Apple or YouTube. I don't think the only other company that I think can compete is Meta, but I don't think Meta because I think Meta is too much. I don't know how to say it, but they're always kind of second with
Well,
with,
they're
you
always
know
kind of not impressive, you know?
Yeah, it's like the new Meta AI that they're doing. It's like ChatGPT is better. And it's like
Mm,
this thing is a little better. They're trying a lot and they're trying to keep up to date, but it's like they're always kind of come second in their new thing that they're doing. Their glasses that Apple tried to do. Like they tried to have these AI, like glasses, smart glasses. And it was like
mhm.
they're not good, and Apple did it better. Apple's coming out with something that's a little better.
Okay, so if we're talking about theaters, who's going to have the theater experience or the version of what the 30 theater experience is in the next 50 years, right? Maybe the theater experience is inside of the metaverse. Maybe the theater experience is Amazon Prime Video theater locations instead of like Regal and AMC.
No, I
You
could
get
see
Prime Video locations, right?
I think Prime, Netflix, and then probably, like, Warner Brothers. I would say if I'm gonna put theater experience because, like, I think Meta is slowly pivoting a little bit away from streaming and that. They're almost becoming kind of a tech company a little bit. With, like, ChatGPT, I don't consider
Well,
that.
they've always been a tech company,
Yeah,
right?
I think they're kind of pivoting a little bit away from, like, the social media. I know that's how they started, but they're creating glasses now. Why? And then chat AI AI search algorithms. They're not doing that. So I wouldn't put Meta. I would put like Prime, Netflix, or even X, and then Warner Brothers, something like that.
I am curious because Warner Brothers has a resiliency no matter how well, first off, I do think between now and 50 years someone's going to have to acquire Warner Brothers, but I don't know who, right? They have a lot of big IPs under their name, and if they keep losing money or things like Max, that's their streaming answer. They don't have. You know what? Screw everything. I think Warner Brothers has the ability to say, we are not the top dog. We will never be the top dog, but we
But
will
it's good.
stay alive for the next 50 years. So they will
Sure.
be comfortably staying alive, creating content that we enjoy occasionally, like, through HBO, they're going to create, Game of Thrones. They're going to create Harry Potter stuff. They're going to keep creating for the next 50 years. They're never going to be top dog, but I think they're going to stay alive. And I'm more willing to put them in probably the streaming category.
Sure.
I think they will stay alive through streaming, but they're not going to be the top dog, right? So I think who's going to be relevant in streaming is probably going to be Warner Brothers, Apple, and YouTube in the next 50 years. Or something's going to come in and change YouTube and compete
Yeah,
with it.
I
But
think
who
ultimately
knows?
this list is skewed because I think it's going to be something new. I think
What do you say this? Are you pretty confident that Apple's going to figure out streaming and become number one, or at least own whatever number one is?
Apple is going to have the device to watch stuff on
Well, hold
and
on. They
say,
already
"Yeah,
have that. What are you talking about?
hear me out." They're trying to do this Vision Pro. So ultimately, they are going to be the number one in entertainment because um what am I thinking? Vision Pro. What is that? That's virtual
Apple.
reality.
Yeah,
Virtual
VR.
reality. Um if they have the number one device for virtual reality, then they control virtual reality. It doesn't matter if they don't have, you know,
Like
the
Google
best
owns
screen.
the internet in some
Yes.
capacity because
Yeah,
everyone uses Google to
Google.
maneuver through the internet,
Yes.
right?
So I think even if they don't have like a streaming service specifically, they're gonna create like Vision Pro. That's gonna be a huge experience to just sit down and watch stuff. If it feels like a movie theater right here in this chair, then a lot of people are gonna watch it. But I think we could call that streaming because they're gonna do something in that direction more than what you think theaters.
Well, I think probably if they're going to compete with YouTube and somebody's going to create something that competes with YouTube, I think who will own that? Probably Apple, because Google's already on top. So there's no point in them competing or creating something new to compete with themselves. They're just going to try to bolster and bolster and bolster YouTube to become
Can you define the word bolster?
unmatched. Bolster, build up,
Oh,
make more powerful,
okay.
Um,
I'll take that.
yeah, I'm willing to make a gamble and say, look, when it comes to streaming, Apple seems to not know what they're doing right now. In 50 years, they may not be the face of the thing that is number one, but
Yeah.
they will probably own
Hey,
the thing that is
I
number
I
one.
got it because I don't agree with anything at the bottom. I think Netflix is doing some interesting things right now when it comes to their live streaming because
Mhm.
that's become a thing more recent, but I don't think that's a longevity type thing. Um,
Do you think Netflix gets
I
into theater realm at all
well, I was
in the
gonna
next 50
say,
years?
can we put Apple right at leave it where it's at on streaming, but can we also put it in theaters at like number 3 or something?
We can
Double it up.
if you think they're going to
If
have
they
that big of a
if they have the
monopoly.
Apple Vision Pro where you can sit in it feels like a theater experience, but also you can just stream everyday things on it too, then Apple
Maybe.
can win both.
Okay, so this is what I think. When it comes to Amazon Prime and the theater experience, yes, they're going to create a lot of stuff and they're going to be a studio. I honestly do think that they are probably going to, although inexperienced, what I've already said many times in this podcast, I think they have the income and the monopoly to create what is going to be the theater and movie space in the next 50 years. I'm not saying I'm happy about it. I'm just saying I feel is what is likely. Okay.
Sure.
So Regal's going to go out of business. AMC is going to go out of business. You're going to have things that are like Amazon or Prime Video theaters, right? And they're going to partner with like IMAX, or IMAX is going to make like a partnership with them, and IMAX will stay alive. IMAX experience, the ultimate experience for theaters, in-person theaters, and Prime's going to own all of it. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
That's what I feel like is going to happen. And then like the mom and pop theaters will still probably maybe or maybe not still be around in 50 years. But I think if they have enough of like a community support in the next 50 years, kind of like the place where we just moved to here, I saw a Cherokee County theater, where they have like a theater it's just like the county theater, movie theater. I think those will still be around, but the monopoly, the big ones are going to be Prime theaters. That's what I think.
Yeah. I'm the next
Disney's going to be dead. Disney's either going to be
Disney will
owned
not be
by
dead,
Apple,
but it'll be owned by somebody else.
and that means it's dead because Disney is a single entity right now. So if they get acquired and are owned by Apple, they are no longer a single entity. They now are a part of the Apple family. So the current Disney is dead. The brand might still be alive and probably will be alive, but they are not going to be a single solo entity anymore. They're going to be owned by an overlord, and that's probably going to be Apple.
Yeah, and then, I mean, I don't have anything else for theaters. Maybe just throw Netflix up there.
I'm curious. Like, I'm willing to move Apple, like you said, up to number 2. And this is more of a hopeful. I would like to see, because Netflix is, although they were the first to streaming after YouTube, but like Hollywood streaming, you know what I mean? They were the first to it. Netflix kind of has this indie innovative spirit, and I'd be curious to see if they eventually start doing some theatrical releases and figuring out how to change the industry to be more predictable without necessarily sacrificing quality. Also, there's also potential that like something like Stranger Things, we saw huge success with The Chosen being a series that comes out in theaters. I think there might be opportunities for Netflix to try to do that, where they release their successful shows that they make every so often as theater experiences, right?
Yeah.
So I don't know. I think there's hope for in the next 50 years that Netflix is still alive and they may be delving into theaters and maybe not be number 1 on streaming anymore, but still be in theaters somehow. But it would be a big task to say that Warner Brothers beats Netflix in streaming. That is a really big gamble or guess, because that's basically what we're saying here, right?
Yeah.
Is that Netflix tries the theater route and Warner Brothers grows in the streaming route, and then it beats Netflix, because Netflix is pretty big in streaming. It's like well over 200 million subscribers. And so we'll have to see.
Yeah, and then X and Meta aren't going to be dead, but they're going to be different. I think they will look different than what they are now.
I think Meta's going to probably end up VR. They're going to be more in the gaming
they're going to be like
space.
a tech company.
Well, they're going to be in the gaming space, right? Because VR is going to be a version of gaming in some capacity. There also literally might be jobs that people have their 9 to 5 at jobs in the meta space in some capacity, but it's going to be more closer to gaming than it is going to be in entertainment, right?
Yeah.
or it's going to be gaming and lifestyle more than it is entertainment. So
Yeah, and then X is just gonna be like it's gonna be a traveling company that it's traveling by rocket. It's
yeah,
like
so
it's like Delta right now, Delta Airlines, but by rocket. You're
this
gonna
is
be
what I
traveling to
think.
the moon.
I think X is going to be dead. In 50 years, it's not going to stick around. I don't
I mean,
think
it'll
anyone
definitely
wants
look
it.
different. It's gonna be different. It's the company itself probably will be here, but it'll be totally different.
I think X is going to die. I think it's going to be fun while it lasts, but ultimately X is going to die because there's a culture of Twitter/X that people don't want. Like people don't like it, and people still use it, but people don't like the culture of it. And eventually, we're going to say, enough is enough. No business wants to acquire it. Elon Musk bought it and changed it on a
Freedom of Speech Act.
freedom of speech, kind of like screw you kind of thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah, there's too many bots on that thing.
Well, also, it's like there's no one else except Elon Musk who's going to do that kind of thing. Like, people aren't going to acquire X to keep it alive for no reason. So, I think it's going to die. I mean, it literally almost died already before he bought it. And I don't know if it has any kind of interest enough to stay around, even though it is interesting for a free speech platform. And he's trying to do stuff with it. I think it's going to die. And then Meta is going to be other, honestly. So just to do a quick recap, Apple's probably going to be top dog in streaming of some sort because they acquire and purchase something. And maybe it's through Disney. Maybe Disney becomes number one and Disney owns something and then ultimately Apple owns Disney, right?
Mhm.
Maybe there is some kind of social version of YouTube that Disney creates or that Apple creates through Disney that becomes number one. Who knows? But Apple's going to be number one through something like that. YouTube might be number two, probably will still be around in the next 50 years. I'm pretty sure it's going to remain number one and keep growing for the next 20 years. Warner Brothers is going to survive in streaming and still be around in 50 years. I think Prime Video is going to probably have ownership of theaters. And you think Apple's going to be in there somewhere? You think they're going to own
Yeah, they're gonna be in there.
whoever's still around with theaters in 50 years? You think Apple's
Yeah.
going to own that as well?
Yeah.
And then Netflix is kind of a maybe not, but we'd like to see Netflix be competing in the theater space of some sort. And then I think Disney as a separate entity will die and probably be acquired by somebody like Apple. And then X is just going to flat out die, I'm pretty sure. And Meta is going to be a different entity. It's going to not be in the necessarily entertainment, streaming, and theater realm.
Yeah.
But it'll be around probably. It'll
I
probably
guess
be
I would
around.
agree. I don't have any qualms with this. I mean, we'll only get to see.
Yeah, in
Reference this
50 years.
podcast in 50 years.
Well, I'll
Go back and watch this.
be 79 in 50
Golly, you
years.
old person, you.
You'll be 77.
Nah.
Yeah.
No.
You'll be 77 in 50 years. So, whichever one of us is still alive, if not all three of us, by the time we reach that age,
You
we
think
have
we'll
to
have great
find a way
grandkids by then?
Great grandkids?
Yeah.
Yeah, I will. Yeah.
Not grandkids, great grandkids.
Yeah, I will.
Yeah.
No, I won't. No, I won't. I don't think so. Maybe. Maybe a little baby great grandkid. By the time I'm 80,
Man.
maybe. Thanks so much for watching. We really appreciate you guys joining us on this episode of Wiseworks Podcast. We hope this is interesting. We hope that that you found this insightful, and we'd love to hear your thoughts on the entertainment world, because I'm sure as you're seeing this crazy information and you're watching streaming and you're paying for streaming platforms and you're deciding, do I just spend $90 for the Disney Hulu, like the streaming version of
The whole
cable that
bundle?
Disney's releasing? Do I spend $90 a month, or do I just not? You know what I mean? Like,
Just
you're asking yourself these questions and you're thinking about the world and the business of entertainment. and I'm sure you have thoughts and different perspectives than we've shared on this podcast. We'd love to hear them in the comments below. If you stuck with us this long, thanks so much. But we'll see you next week. Wyatt will be back, and we really appreciate your guys' time, your investment, and your support. Again, if you want to support us, go to the link in the description for Patreon or join the YouTube memberships. We'll see you next time. We love you.